So, welcome, Matthias, to Metallarium Pages. It's a great pleasure to talk with you about Defigurement, this new album, Embryo, and more things related to the metal world in general. So, we started by asking, how are you doing today, and how is the band doing since you started the band in 2022?
Good, man. We just reached San Diego, went to the 7-Eleven for some coffee, and yeah, man, it's been good. The album just came out 2 weeks ago, and uh, people seem to be liking it, and yeah, it's been really cool finally getting this album out there, and we're all excited that people can finally hear it.
Okay. And when do you decide writing songs for this new album? Because this new album, like the band is new, 2022. Perhaps it was before of the creation of the band with another band, etc., etc. Or perhaps these all the songs recorded was just created the last year. Who knows?
Yeah, so Kevin, the guitar player, and Damien, the bass player, they have been friends for many years, and they were writing some songs together that was like just for fun. And at some point, Damien sent me a couple of them and said, "Hey, do some vocals on this or whatever," and I did. And then pretty much it was just a project we were thinking of doing, just casually. It was kind of during COVID, honestly, like 2021, I think we started working on it. And then I messaged Mike Heller from Malignancy and Raven and a bunch of other bands to play drums on it. And at that point, that's when we started like being like, oh shit, this actually sounds pretty cool, maybe we'll turn it into some kind of project and give it a name and everything.
Okay. Okay. So now, I one thing that I so in this situation, this Embryo is the first album from the band in general because your previous EP, Got Topsy, it was released in this year also. So and for you, when you create a new album and new songs, how do you really the concept of the feelings with especially with your kind of music is so technical, it's a lot of technical your kind of music, but at the same time the brutal stuff there is like amazing in this one. So how do you relate the feeling stuff of the brutal stuff with the mathematical topic? For you, which is the most important thing when you create a song?
I mean, that's a good question, honestly. All the songs are so different on that album, so I would kind of just write the lyrics and the vocals one song at a time. And I think especially the first half of the album and then the second half have a very different sound to them. The first half is more grindcore and then the second half has more of the psychedelic parts and some kind of more like death metal parts, but also a little bit of black metal or whatever. So yeah, I kind of just we did it like song by song, and the real challenge was sort of trying to arrange everything as an album at the end and add some like interludes and some other things, samples and whatever in between the songs to sort of make it all fit together like a package. But yeah, that's kind of how we approached mm, writing everything and like assembling the finished product.
Hmm. Okay. Now, well, a good thing about this, as you can see, there is like a tons of releases per weekend, especially with a lot of music. There is no, it's impossible to get attention for as a media for us to just get attention for this record, or more records. And for this, for you, what is the special? What the Figurement has special compared to a ton of releases per weekend?
Another good question because that is the truth. There's so many bands and like every week, even the bands that we all love, like the big bands, Testament just put out a new record and whatever, like all even the big famous bands are constantly releasing music and yeah, it's tough. We didn't really worry too much about it. We were just hoping, hey man, there's some cool people involved, some of the members of Cephalic Carnage and Impaled and whatever. And we just hoped that, people would like it and we try not to worry too much about, you know, if it'll be successful or not. But I think having the lineup with a bunch of different people from different bands and different countries and different parts of the world, that seemed to help a lot. Uh, kind of if people read about it, they would be like, "Oh, that's interesting that, you know, there's members from Bad Acid Trip and Lack of Interest, which are kind of like hardcore or like crossover almost, like power violence bands. But then having those members doing like a technical grindcore album, it's a little different. I think that seemed to catch a lot of people's attention, just having all the different styles in one album, all the different musicians in there.
Okay, okay. So other thing that I denoted is that, well, mostly your kind of influence is related with the brutal death metal stuff. This band is like more technical grindcore or grindcore in general. So then what motivates you to form part of this a band like with the Defigurement when you like lean down for more the dead classic stuff? I saw your T-shirt from Gorgors, behind you Cannibal Corpse, and mostly
Yeah.
your bands are like necropathy, rottenness, or brutal death metal stuff.
Yeah. I've always loved grindcore. I mean, grindcore is like the coolest kind of music for me. I mean, I love, yeah, brutal death metal, of course, and black metal, death metal, everything. But I definitely have always been a huge fan of grindcore, the band Gridlink,
Mm.
Brutal Truth, and mainly Cephalic Carnage. Cephalic Carnage is like one of my favorite bands of all time. So that was a huge inspiration for this kind of project where it's like grindcore with a bunch of different other genres attached to it. And yeah, that one for me, I've always wanted to make an album that was kind of like a Cephalic Carnage worship band a little bit. And I think you can definitely hear that on a few of the songs, like the influence there of Cephalic Carnage and Brutal Truth and bands like that.
Hmm. Okay, yeah, well, yeah. You have a lot of interest for a lot, but either way, you have like a special thing. There's not like cephalic or brutal truth. That's a good thing about this. Now we're talking about the promotion for this new album. So, what kind of promotion do you have for this embryo? Perhaps you release videos. Perhaps you're already working on a second album, or perhaps you will, as you have a lot of contacts with Rottenness from Mexico, you will play do in Latin American tour or just Mexico. Who knows?
Espero que sí, pero no tenemos planes ahora. Like we don't have any plans right now. Kevin lives in California here, so I'm hoping that someday we'll do maybe just some United States shows. We're all very busy. Rottnest is leaving for a Asia tour. Our first show is tomorrow in San Diego, and then we're gonna go into Asia. And then Kevin's been super busy with Lack of Interest. Mike is in Malignancy and does all these other bands. So yeah, we definitely want to play shows eventually, but right now we're all just busy with our other bands and doing stuff. And to answer your question about the promotion, that was all done by Nefarious Industries, the record label, works with Ear Split Compound. Shout out to Dave from Ear Split, and they helped a lot, like get the album out into Decibel magazine and these blogs and set up the interview with you. So
Mm.
mucho gusto, amigo. Very nice to meet you. And yeah, so they basically took over everything for promoting this album, and they did a really good job. So once again, thank you, Nefarious Industries, and thank you, Ear Split Compound, for helping us with that.
Okay, so one thing that you said it is correct about this one because the Figurement is like a band with a lot of guys that playing in another bands. You said it. Rottenness will do a tour and will do a full tour in Asia. In Asia, then Mike is completely busy with a lot of bands with a playing with play with a huge bands now. Now there's Kevin and living in another city, and Damien living in another city. That's complete. So how do you will figure out when, for example, there is a demand to play some gigs tours there in US when all people are really busy?
I mean, I think we'll just, find the right time. Certainly something out here on the West Coast in California would make sense because then two of the guys are already in California, so then the other two can just fly in and yeah, hopefully we'll get to do that. I think at this point now that the album is out, now we can at least think about going and playing gigs. Whereas before we didn't really want to play shows until the album was, finished. So yeah, that is the year 2025 being in a band is kind of very difficult because there's so many other bands out there, but it also can be nice for bands like this where we can use the internet to send each other ideas and record in different places. And I mean, that is one nice thing about it, like having a home studio and being able to record and then put everything together without even necessarily having to all record in the same studio or anything like that.
Hmm. Okay, okay. So, for this kind of situations, what will be the next steps for the Defigurement at this moment? Because you did an EP, an album this year, and for the future, where will be the next steps?
We do have a demo of a second album um, that Kevin wrote. I think it's a bunch of songs that he's written over the years uh, for various projects, and that's sort of what some of the Defigurement songs turned out as, just other things he had written in the past, and then reworking them with different drums and different ideas and everything. So there is most of a second record that we've he sent me a couple years ago, and there's like demos of it. And so definitely we'd like to do a second album, start working on it. And it, as of right now, I mean, we haven't really put too much effort into it, but I've definitely listened to the songs for the second album, and there's some more really cool ideas from Kevin that uh I mean, he just constantly is coming up with songs and good ideas, so probably just go from there.
Hmm. Okay. So, and in this one thing that captured my attention about the titles, especially from the EP and the album, is the name of these ones. And why? Because God Autopsy, I think is the just two words mixed in one. God
Yeah.
Autopsy or God Topsy, or
Yep.
end the end for embryo. So and then this one for in this situation, who came with the idea to mix these two words in just one word and why? And this will be like a common thing talking about the lyric, all the or the thematic stuff in the band.
Yeah, I wrote all the lyrics and all the song titles, and I just love stupid puns. I don't know. I like having some idea of like, yeah, you nailed it, like God autopsy, and just thinking those words sounded cool, and then just, oh, it'd be cooler if it was just God topsy as one word. And I don't know. I like plays on words and puns and stuff like that, or just like little, I don't know, making up words basically that just shit that sounds cool.
Hmm.
Yep.
Oh, okay. So now let's talk about more a little kind of things. Well, let's first we are a little far away from the figurement. And what kind of opinion do you have for now? Because the figurement is a technical band. It's completely normal the technical stuff in this kind of situation. But as you can see, the death metal or the extreme metal is so technical nowadays. Not just the death metal. Oh, thanks to the death metal because since I was there since the 80s with Bolt Thrower, with the first bands of the first wave of the blood of the death metal, all
Yeah.
these kind of bands plays so technical, so fast, Morbid Angel, Bolt Thrower, Obituary, Death, Autopsy, all these kind of bands. Then the 90s was so technical, more Cryptopsy, more etc. And now a lot of musicians play so fast, so technical, so clean. Now the extreme music is not like the old days, like the raw concept, like the savage concept. It's more cleanness. You hear a new band, so cleanness, so perfect, so
Yeah.
everything. What kind of opinion do you have for this? For the extreme music nowadays, is so clean and so perfect in all ways. It's not anymore like the when you hear the first albums, for example, School Full of Maggots from the demo. That sounds different than now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that it's cool how there are bands that definitely can have this amazing production and like very, very clean recordings. Obviously, the Defigurement stuff, yeah, we went with that very technical, clean sound. But it's funny because all of our other projects, for the most part, we
Mhm,
come from raw, like grindcore, raw death metal or whatever. Like Kevin's other band, Lack of Interest, like I said, that's more like power violence and super raw recordings. I think they started in the 90s, the early 90s. I'd have to look it up. They've been around forever.
mhm,
Damien also is in a band called Mormon Mincers. That's like mince grind.
mhm,
Also very just raw, like heavy mince core grind with like pitch shifter vocals and everything. So, I mean, yeah, all the rotten ass stuff that we record, we do that pretty damn raw. Like we don't really, clean up the production and like make it sound all perfect. We do kind of just
mhm.
record it pretty DIY and very organic. Um, so I like to answer your question. I like both things. I like modern production that sounds really good, and I also like sometimes to have some shit that just sounds super raw and nasty and you know sounds like some demo from the 90s or the early 2000s or something like that.
Hmm. Okay, okay. I understand. Now, well, let's talk about more another kind of things, especially in the metal industry. Now we are like the last resistant of the physical stuff, just the metal scene, and the bigger labels are just selling the actions for. Let's put this like that. Action Nuclear Blast belongs to Sony Music or to Warner Bros. I think, or and also Century Media now is belongs to Sony Music.
Yep.
The great labels, Metal Blade also is with Sony Music and etc. and etc. So now, what do you think about now the movement of the underground compared this all this kind of stuff that now the bigger enterprises in the entertainment industry are focused on the physical stuff that metal is producing now, and we are living the last stand of the musical stuff in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's cool that that is one thing about metal that's always sort of been the same, that the underground is always the underground, it's always doing its own thing. And even though right now, yeah, the music industry is kind of getting fucked up, like AI music and yeah, like Sony owning a lot of the big labels and everything. um it is cool to see that there's still underground labels and there's still underground bands. And obviously, yeah, the internet and social media and everything has like totally changed the landscape of music. And that it's again, it's great in some ways and it's kind of really shitty in other ways. But it is very great to, see the underground, and whether we like it or not, this is kind of where we're at. We're probably never going to be in any famous bands or anything, and oh, except for Mike. Mike's doing just fine. He's in Malignancy and Raven and all that. But for the rest of us, yeah, we kind of just, and even that, a lot of, Malignancy is underground compared to mainstream standards. So, that's just where we're at. We make underground music and we make it for ourselves and people like us and people that just like heavy music. And that is one of the things I love most about metal is that it's just it's from the underground for the underground, That's fucking awesome.
Mhm. Okay. And one of the last questions from this interview, Matthias, it is, for example, about the underground that you said it. Because if we compare the real underground, or I don't know, the nostalgic underground for the 80s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, when I remember tape trading at that moment because it was the only way to know music or writing letters for a different people in a different part of the world, etc., etc. That's a different kind of underground. Now the underground is more related for like a resistance, like something like that. Not like the because now if you want to hear a new band, you just put the Spotify or YouTube and the new band is there. So the
Yep.
underground is not anymore like inaccessible. It's like more accessible. So do you think that the underground still exists in a world and that you can hear a band from, I don't know, from Greenland or from like the India, I don't know, for a different country that we don't know that exists, but there is a new band for the play death metal with this kind of music.
Yeah. I mean, for sure, you can, if you know about the band, you could like, yeah, type them into Google and probably
Mhm.
find Spotify or Bandcamp or something. But to me, I guess just the definition of underground now has changed a little. So those bands are still underground because still maybe only like 100 people know about this band. Or yes, they have Spotify, but there's only 50 people that listen to their music on there, something like that. So it's just like the definition of underground, I guess, changes with the times. And I mean, yeah, to me, all of this stuff is still underground because it's not mainstream. It's not, being promoted by some really big record label with a bunch of money invested. Like the majority of metal bands are still doing it just a lot of times in their local scenes. I mean, yeah, we were talking about Mexico earlier, tape trading and stuff. And I mean, yeah, there's still so many Mexican bands that like if you don't live in Mexico, you're not gonna ever see these bands or hear these bands. And so to me, yeah, totally still underground for sure. And that's very cool, I think.
Okay, okay, I understand completely about this one. One thing that, well, and one of the last question, it is about your other project for Rottenness, because I think Rottenness, this is the second time we'll play in Asia about a tour there, or a third time, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a different kind. So then this one, Rottenness is like a band that doesn't have, is something special into the brutal death metal grind. It's not like the biggest bands like Deeds of Flesh, like Disgorge, or the bands that change the wheels into the death metal scene. Rottenness is
Yeah.
following this kind of this path on the in this kind of music. And so how Rottenness, how is the topic of Rottenness happen to play tours in another part of the works? Contacts, obviously is contacts, this situation, but how do you compensate this idea that the Rottenness doesn't have something special into the brutal death metal, because the brutal death metal is very close mind. If you can see, there is like five bands, and these five bands is like mostly all the sounds into the brutal death metal. So how do you
Yeah.
compensate the idea of the brutal death metal stuff, or the Rottenness doesn't have this a personal sound compared with, for example, with the bigger bands in this style?
Yeah, Halil Castillo, the founder of the band, he's actually going to be arriving here to San Diego later tonight. So
Mhm.
unfortunately, he's not here right now, but he started the band in the 90s and yeah, he, was very influenced by all those brutal death metal bands, of course, Disgorge, and he has always, loved brutal death metal and that style, but he's always had just little tinges of grindcore, some of the old stuff. Maybe there'll just be some random song that's just like a bunch of screaming and fast blasting. And then the rest of the songs are more like chunky, brutal death metal gurgling and stuff. And then I've been in the band for 10 years now, and we've always had these ideas of like, oh, we should do you know, maybe some more grindcore sound like uh 6, 7 years ago we were thinking of more of this grindcore kind of sound. And then now we've just decided, hey, whatever, like we have put out albums that are brutal death metal, we've put out albums that are more death metal or death grind, and now we've put out a demo this year that I would say is going back to the more brutal death metal sound, and we just always change it up. Like we have a demo coming out tomorrow. We have a split coming out tomorrow with the band Saintbreaker. We're touring Japan with them next week. Um, and yeah, that split, I'll check it out. I'll send you the link after this interview's over and everything. And yeah, back to very weird combination of sounds. I think it's kind of brutal death metal, but there's some surprises in there too. There's some grindcore parts. There's a Cephalic Carnage cover as the bonus track, and yeah, we've just always tried to change it up and keep things interesting. And yeah, we just don't really care about labels or, you know, staying in one style. We just keep just doing whatever we feel like is fun to do and, make music that we want to listen to.
Okay, okay. Well, Matthias, we arrived at the sad moment of this interview. Thank you very much for your time. This first album from Defigurement, the Embryo, is an amazing one. So I hope so my pre-order arrives soon because really like this kind of music. And perhaps do you want to add something to your Latin American fans and obviously Metallica followers?
Saludos amigos y nos vemos pronto. Y muchas gracias por todo, amigo. It's been so nice to meet you and to talk to you. And yeah, for sure, would love to do another interview soon with you. And thank you for everything. Muchas gracias por todo. And see you next time, man.